Allie Buckman with PotomacBeads.com, and today I want to show you a little twist on right angle weave using 2-holed EOS beads. These are going to be used to make the Laguna Necklace, which features some teardrops in multiple different sizes, as well as those fun EOS and some Czech glass. Stay tuned for all the materials at the very end of the video or at the dialog box below, or keep in mind we just listed them out for you. To begin the Laguna necklace, I am going to start with a stop bead on my 5 feet of my 0.006 white Wildfire thread. I'm going to take the stop bead down to the end of the thread, and I will need to add a clasp to the end of the thread, so you do want to leave yourself about 8 inches at the end of the thread, and that way we'll go back and add our wire guard or our wire protector and our clasp at the very end, and I'll go over how to show that with you. But you're just going to take your thread and needle through the bead that's not part of your necklace 2 times. That's going to create our stop bead, which is essentially going to stop our beads from falling off the end of our design. To begin the design, I want you to have your EOS. We're going to add an EOS, then a 3mm bead, an EOS, and a 3mm. You can see I have a collection of kind of underwater reef colors in my 3mm beads that I'm using. And we're going to do a right angle weave technique with a 2-hole bead. We're going back through that first EOS through the same hole that our thread is coming out of, and we're going to pull nice and tightly. That's going to put the 2 fire polished rounds on the top and bottom. I'm going to sew back through the fire polished round that my thread is next to. Coming out the fire polished round, you're going to sew through your EOS. There you just created your first little box unit or your first little right angle unit. As you add and join them, we're going to continue adding with our Czech glass, and now what we're going to do is decorate the sides of our EOS bead. To decorate the sides of the EOS bead, on the top of the design, we are going to use an 11-0 seed bead in that Crystal Lab Full, a teardrop, and an 11-0 seed bead. I'm then going to go from the bottom hole of the EOS to the top hole. So you're going to bring your thread and needle from the bottom hole to the top hole. Give a little tight pull and make sure that those sit so they're sitting directly over. They kind of fit perfectly right there in front of the EOS bead or the EOS bead. From there, on the other side, we're going to pick up our pretty matte TLAB drops here, and we're putting on the matte TLAB drops with an 11-0 on each side as well, and sewing back through, circling around that EOS bead. And that's going to put those teardrops there to the bottom of the design. So we're going to have the bigger teardrops to the bottom and the smaller to the top. Coming back out the top then, we're going to retrace our thread line through the 11-0, which my needle already went, through the teardrop, back down the 11-0, and out after the EOS bead. So the pattern to decorate the top and the bottom of the EOS is always going to be the same, kind of spinning around, catching in those teardrops and adding them on. Coming out then the EOS bead, we're going to add another 3mm, another EOS bead, and another 3mm bead. Those are what you're always going to add at your connection points. So back through that second or that same EOS bead through the second hole where the thread and needle are already coming out, and that's going to pull the beads that you just added onto that nice little chain. Again, then we're going to sew back through in a right angle weave style the Czech glass that's right next to the EOS, sew through that first hole of the EOS bead, and as we come out the top, we add an 11, a Miyuki drop, and an 11. Sew down the EOS. At the bottom then, we're going to add a drop, the Czech drop, and then the 11. Back up through the top here, out the EOS, and give a nice little tight pull. To get us in place to add on our next EOS and start our next little brick, I'm going to sew through that 11-0, teardrop, and 11, and then down through the EOS bead. And then we are back ready to go again. And you're going to continue adding on the drop or I'm sorry, the drops at the top and the bottom, and the check glass as a connector point. So you're doing the check, the EOS, add it on, and then the check glass, and then we're going to circle around, back through the EOS, and out, and then sewing back through the sides and decorating our EOS. Continue this for about 3 inches of this pattern. After you have your 3 inches of your pattern that we've been maintaining with the drops on the top, the Miyuki 3x4 drop on the top, and then the 4x6 on the bottom, going the whole way around, we're going to start introducing these 6x9mm drops. The way that the 6x9mm drops are going to set and be introduced is in between the EOS bead at the bottom where we were adding a check glass. We're going to add one of the bigger drops, then the EOS, then the check glass, and circle around. That's going to bunch them up in that nice kind of corally reef, which is how the necklace of the Laguna got its name. I'm going to do this and add in, to make my 18-inch necklace, the whole strand of my 6x9mm drops. To add in those 6x9mm drops when you're coming around and you're coming out of the last EOS bead, you're going to add one of the larger drops in that Capri blue color. Then you add your EOS, and then you add your check glass. So just like we've been doing then, you're going to go through the top of the EOS that is there and give a nice little tight pull. You may need to, with your hand, kind of give it a little bit of a yank. So back through the drop, just like we were with the check glass, back through the EOS bead, and then you're in place to continue with that same pattern of adding your 11 Miyuki drop, and then your 11, and then coming down the design and adding in that same pattern. It's very, very simple then, of the drop, then the 4x6mm drop, and then back up and continuing on. Again, as you continue on with the design, you're just going to continue on adding in that larger drop then in place of the beginning piece of check glass. So at the transition point here, you can see we went from the initial transition of doing all of the 3mm to, instead of the 3mm check glass on the bottom, we dropped in a teardrop. Continued that teardrop look here for about 12 inches total. And then we're going to switch back to a smaller version like we did at the beginning, going back in and adding a check glass bead rather than the teardrop. To show you an alternative, Anna made another alternative to this necklace. As I was working on it, she decided that she was going to have some fun with rizzos and the drops. So instead of doing the exact same pattern that I did, just to show you some variety, she started off by using, instead of the check glass, some drops along the top and a rizzo along the bottom. So instead of our check glass along the top and the bottom, she used a drop and a rizzo, and then coming around the top, stuck a rizzo at the top and the drop. As she got down to the bottom then, she increased, sticking the bigger drops on the top, larger on the bottom, and then increased even to the daggers. So you can see it's a very, very simple chain link pattern, adding in really whatever you want to at the top and the bottom of the design. The 11-0 and the teardrops will sit really nicely and perfectly right above the EOS bead, and because of the way that it is linked in that right angle manner, it sits super, super well to bend and fold in any direction. If you did want to do a little bit more of a fluff and a ruffle on both sides and have them mimic one another, you can do that as well too for a nice substantial bracelet. At this point, I'm going to go back in the design then and continue on with that right angle weave, going from adding the larger bead at the bottom now, which I had done for about 12 inches, to switching back to just the check glass along the bottom row. Once you have your desired length and you go back to that decreasing on the end, adding in the check glass again after the rest of the drops that you have, it's time to add the clasp. I went back and I added it on one side so that way I could show you the effect. And what we're going to do as we add the clasp is not include any teardrops on the sides of our EOS bead. As we end, we'll just do 3 seed beads and then we'll come out into a triangle and add our clasp. To do so, the first thing I'm going to do is take off my stop bead. that was added there at the end. And once that stop bead is off, I'm going to do 3 of my 11 seed beads, go through the second hole of the EOS bead, and that's just going to create that little point there. Mimic that on the other side, adding 3 11s, and go back through the EOS bead. I'm also going to go back through those 3 11s that sit along the top. So just like if we were getting ready to add our next little right angle unit, we're going all the way over till we're coming out of the EOS bead at the end. From here, I'm going to add 3 of my 11s. And then I want you to grab your wire guard if you're using a regular clasp. If you're doing a button, you can add that now. I'm going to go up through the wire guard, through my end of my clasp here, and this is the ridged barrel clasp. Make sure that barrel clasp goes onto the wire guard. And then sew down through the second side of the wire guard. So the wire guards, if you haven't used them, they're like a little horseshoe shape. They're open in the middle, and then they have those 2 little tubular sections on the ends. From here, go back down through that first 11 seed bead. Give a little tight pull, make sure all those seed beads get in there tightly. Add 2 more 11s, and sew back through that EOS bead. So we're going to sew back through the EOS, coming out here along the top. And when we do that, again, we're going to give a little tight pull so we make sure that it sits nice and in that triangle. You can also take your wire guard, and I like to pinch mine just the tiniest little bit so that way they almost touch at the ends rather than sitting apart. From here, I'm going to reinforce that whole thing, going back through all my seed beads. One more time, retracing my thread line, going back through my wire guard and out the top, making sure as I go through my wire guard and out the top here that I go through my clasp as well, that the thread sits nicely in that channel of the wire guard, down the other side of the wire guard, and down that 11 seed bead. Once I have that in there, I'm going to go down through the 11s on the other side of the EOS. And then as I sew back through, I'm going to go through that EOS bead and kind of play around with getting that thread and needle further back along the design and then tying it off. So I'm just kind of snaking back through the design here, bringing my thread out along an end. I'll do a sewer's knot, making a loop, sewing back through that loop that I just made, and making sure that knot sits securely between 2 beads. I'll sew back through it once, sew back through the knot twice, and give a nice tight pull then. So back through some of the seed beads then. Oops, not catching onto your clasp. Get that out of there. Back down along that right angle weave section here. Going through the check glass, then coming back up through the next of my EOS beads. And then I'll take my thread zap or my thread burner, go in nice and close, and then burn down that little thread end. And there it becomes disguised. Once you have that done, then your entire Laguna necklace is finished, and you have that nice kind of snap barrel clasp that you can go into. If you're not sure of the length, you may also want to do a lobster clasp and an actual extender chain too for this necklace. That's a nice idea since you can wear it with many different styles. When you're finished with the necklace too, you can see the variety and the fun and the pattern that you have. I wanted to grab Anna's here to sit next to mine to show you that I did end up using 50 of the EOS beads in my design here. And I used almost an entire strand of the 6x9mm drops. I used about half a strand of the 4x6mm drops, and then a little bit of my tube of my 3x4mm Miyuki seed bead drops as well. And check out Anna's design where she threw in the Rizzos and then some of the the single hole daggers as well, changing up that nice right angle weave design and having fun with the fluidity of this necklace that you really can change up what you add in the middle, not using check glass or using it at the end and keeping it small, or even doubling it on both sides and making it as a wrap bracelet as well. I had fun doing this with all the different drops and had fun even inspiring Anna to pick up and make hers as well. So if you get a chance to grab any of the EOS beads, they make a great little chain here that you can embellish. Keep in mind you can also use other beads in this. You could use bricks, you could use 2 of your bars, you could use and try out super duos. It may just change a little bit the actual kind of tension between it and how they kind of pile up along the middle with those drops. So keep that in mind. You may have to drop down a little bit and add an 11-0 seed bead or a 15-0 in place as well. But hopefully it inspires you to pick up some of those 2-hole beads, work with them in that right angle weave, and hang a little bit down to make a fun statement necklace as well. So again, if you need any of the materials, you can go to the below the video here to the little links where we have them listed out. And other than 11-0 seed beads and a variety of drops, you just need those EOS beads and have fun creating with some thread and needle. Again, it was a fun example of using 2 holes for a right angle weave, hanging those drops down, getting your clasp on and doing that design and working with wire guards as well. Thanks so much for watching and have fun kind of creating. Again, you can shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com and PotomacBeads.eu, as well as become part of our community. Join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There you can get inspiration, design ideas, really interact with an awesome group of people that love to do the craft of making jewelry. As well as, if you get a chance to, you could give me a little thumbs up for this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Then you get regular updates from myself as well as PotomacBeads.com for different videos that we do, different ideas, helpful hints, things you should know, and new products that are on the rise as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and have fun creating.